All right, everybody, welcome to the first episode of Whispers Through the Veil. This is going to be my podcast series that I'm going to be doing on the YouTube channel. Um, I've got some other things planned for the YouTube channel, definitely going into more depth about the things I cover in the podcast episodes, but I really just want to get things going on here as we kind of move into the new year. It is New Year's Eve, and tomorrow is going to be New Year's, so might as well give you guys something to start off the brand new year with, right? So, yeah, in today's video or podcast episode, I want to mainly cover the very essentials, the basics of what manifestation is. How do we do this? What does it mean? And what factors play into manifestation, right? What kind of makes manifestation happen, and how does it affect our day to day lives, right? And so, first, I'm going to start about what manifestation is, right? And as I speak, I'm just going to quickly write down in my notes so I don't lose track of what I have to talk about. Um, just bear with me for 1 second. Uh, what is manifestation? How do we do it? And what factors go into it? Okay, so starting off with what is manifesting, right? Manifesting is consciously or unconsciously bringing certain experiences into our life, right? And when I say experiences, this could be money, this could be a car, a house, a lover. It could be literally anything you want to experience in your life. Manifesting is just bringing that into your life, right? It's not something that is this crazy, magic trick where we do something a certain amount of times and it magically appears in our life. No, we do manifesting uh, every day, all the time. Ever since we were born, we've been manifesting, and now you're just learning how to consciously choose that power for yourself and make it work for you as opposed to against you, right? And again, you are never really manifesting anything. You are always becoming the identity that has that thing, right? And so this is something that you guys have to remember, and everyone has to kind of remember when you're quote unquote manifesting anything in your life, is you're not really ever manifesting anything. You're just becoming the identity that has that certain thing. Because ultimately, the way I teach manifestation, the way I believe it works, is through identity. And a lot of people might disagree with that, but I do think self-concept is a very important aspect to what manifesting is and how we bring in certain experiences to our life. If you look back into your own life, I'm sure there's been so many instances where how you treat yourself internally ends up playing out in front of you, and you're not really surprised when that does, whether that be good or bad. It's just something that we've all experienced before, and it's not something that you know, um, most people recognize until they get onto this journey. Like, hey, I kind of did bring all this stuff onto myself because I was being the identity where something like that would happen to, right? So that should cover what manifesting is. And now I kind of want to talk about how do we do it, right? So there's again, like I said, you're not ever manifesting anything, but you're always going to be the identity that has whatever it is you're trying to bring in. So there's many ways that we can do this, right? But before I even get into that, I think it's important for me to bring up the aspects of ego and awareness, right? Because these are going to be your two kind of opposing forces that really make things kind of materialize for you, right? Whatever side you're leaning towards greater than the other is what you're going to end up experiencing in your life. So, starting off with ego. Ego is kind of, I want you guys to think of it like a computer program where it takes all of your life experiences throughout the past however many years you've been alive, and it's just going to take all of that stuff, and you're pretty much feeding it this information, right? You're feeding it all this information, and kind of like how AI works, you feed its information and it gives you a response based off what you've been through in the past, right? So if you've had a certain story towards something and you reacted to it in a negative way, any mention of that thing is going to end up reacting negatively. So then this negative loop kind of keeps playing out in your life over and over again because that is the current script that's being played. But something you have to understand is, I do see a lot of people saying that, your ego is against you and, all these things, which to some degree it is, but it's also just a tool. It is just there for human survival. It's what keeps us alive, right? So we can't necessarily live without our ego. We kind of do need it to get through our lives, to make sure we're not fucking just dying. But uh, the only way that you could ever escape your ego is through death. And doesn't really seem like we have any intentions of dying anytime soon because clearly we're here to experience this illusionary world as we see fit. So that pretty much covers what the ego is. So depending on what experiences you've had on your life, you're going to experience certain things in your life, right? Because before you ever knew anything about manifesting, you kind of were always leaning towards, you actually were only running through your ego. So you would always experience certain loops and patterns in your life depending on certain things. So in the past, if you were a child, people would say that in your developmental years, you kind of develop a lot of certain traits that or patterns that you kind of carry on throughout your life. So if you experienced a lot of success as a child, you're going to see that pattern of success throughout your entire life. Or, if you didn't have a good relationship with parents or something to that nature, then you might have certain things that show up negatively in your relationships with other people as well. So again, to make it really simple, your ego is nothing more than just a program that runs off a script. Now, awareness is going to be the programmer behind that script, right? We are aware of what the ego is doing, right? So you get on this journey of manifesting, and now you're learning about manifestation and the roles that play into it. Now you're able to observe your ego. Now you're able to see why certain things happen in your life the way they do. You are now able to understand why things happened the way they did in your life, whether it be good or bad. That it doesn't really matter. You're able to understand why, right? And as awareness, we are constantly choosing. We are the decider of our lives and everything we experience, right? So as awareness, we choose to experience something, right? So it is anytime we have a desire for something, that is our awareness. It's in our awareness, right? So then we'll start to see the materialization of something towards that, right? For example, you want to get into a relationship or something to that nature. Maybe you want to manifest a better job, whatever it might be. What you're going to do is you're obviously going to have the desire for this thing. This desire doesn't just come to you magically. It's something that is already in your awareness. And so now through awareness, you're pretty much clicking play on this script. So as things start to materialize, once you've made the decision of how or what you want in your life, it's going to start to play out, right? And ego, obviously, if it's something that is kind of left field of something you've experienced in your life. So if you've had bad relationships your entire life and you never had like a safe relationship with a partner that felt safe, and now you're acting or you're affirming or you're choosing to have that in your life now, then obviously your ego is going to fight you on that. And something you have to understand is that your ego, again, is like a script that has its own antivirus in it, right? You have to kind of see you choosing your new decision, right? If you've experienced only bad shit in relationships in the past, and now you're automatically choosing, hey, now I want to experience good stuff in my life, right? Understand that your ego is going to fight you on that because you're going against the script you've been running your whole life. But as awareness, you have to continuously choose the new script over and over again. And this is how you manifest anything in your life. It is so simple, but it's the movement throughout the middle of manifesting that kind of gets you, right? Even though it's as simple as choosing a new anytime the old awareness pops up, it is scary to kind of have to confront that or having to see the opposite or of whatever you've been affirming for, right? But you have to understand, again, reality is your mirror. So it is only ever going to mirror back what you are choosing for yourself, right? But you won't always see the materialization of something instantly. It's not always going to happen automatically. It's not going to happen the second you affirm something, sometimes it might, sometimes it might not. Ultimately, that's in the hands of God, in the hands of infinite intelligence, whatever you want to call the power universe, whatever it is, right? That is ultimately up to the powers that may be. It's not really up to us to decide how that's going to work out, how it's going to play out, or what that's even going to look like for us. We're only ever just choosing what we want, okay? And the important thing is, as we move throughout the middle, we really want to make sure that we're sticking to this new identity as much as possible, right? To make it easier for you, you want to choose this new identity more than you choose the old one, right? So no matter if your mind tries to fight you, or it might seem outside as if nothing is happening, or if you want to make a decision and your ego is fighting you on that, what you are going to do is, no matter what, you're going to choose the new version of you instead, right? Because your ego, again, it's going to fight you. But if you are the identity that already has this thing, you don't fucking care if something's fighting you or opposing you. You already have that thing. So what do you care if somebody's telling you the opposite, or if you're seeing something that isn't exactly showing you what you want, right? And so this is the most important part, right? And it's really easy to fuck up what you're actually doing. And I'm going to give you guys a few examples. So if this relates to you, take it to heart and maybe readjust whatever you need to adjust, and, kind of fix things as you need to. But the first example I'm going to bring up is, if you're trying to manifest something and you're obsessed with it, right? And to quickly touch on obsession, obsession is pretty much your relationship to whatever it is you're desiring, whatever you're bringing in to manifest, right? If you already had something, right? Like, I have this phone, okay? If I already have this phone, which I do, right? I'm not obsessed with my phone. I don't need to see it in front of me all the time to know that it's mine. I don't need to constantly be on it to know that I have the phone. I'm already aware that I have the phone, right? So I'm not constantly checking, where's my phone, where's my phone, where's my phone? I have it already, right? So this is essentially how we manifest and how we stay on top of ourselves, right? You and your relationship to whatever it is that you're manifesting is how things will look out for you. If reality is a mirror and you're placing something above you, so for example, if I want to manifest a girlfriend and I'm like putting this girlfriend above myself, right? I'm like going out of my way to try to make this happen. Or if I'm going out of my way to, just constantly think about where is it, how is it going to come in, all this other stuff, you're confused internally. You're going crazy 100 miles per hour inside your mind. So you're going to look out there and you're not going to see anything, or you might even see the opposite of what you want, because you're in like a mental turmoil, right? So whatever's being done internally is going to be reflected outside, right? Again, you aren't ever being tested, you aren't ever being like put through trials or anything like that. You can call it a trial if you want to, but it's not really a trial. It's just reality materializing to you while the old shit's kind of materializing out as well, right? These two forces are kind of coming into the mirror, but one needs to be pushed out because there can only ever be one thing. So if you are ever in a position where you're manifesting something, but you're seeing hot and cold, or if you're seeing the opposite in front of you, it's because the old story is being pushed out so that the new one can become the dominant story, right? And it's really important that you understand that, because once you've been putting in the work, you're going to start to obviously see the materialization for that. Once you become more understanding of what's happening, and you kind of start to understand that things are actually real, whatever you're interpreting internally is real, then you actually will start to see the real materialization of that in a certain way. So you have to understand, if things are not looking perfect outside right now, that doesn't mean that you're fucking anything up. And this is, I feel like, the number one thing that people fuck up all the time, is they'll see the opposite of something, and maybe they'll see something as stagnant in the 3D, and they'll be like, okay, I'm doing something wrong. Now I need to go look for more content. I need to go do this, and I need to go do that, and I need to like figure out this shit. I need to read more books and book more coaching calls or whatever. And it just puts you in this loop of confusion, man. And then what is reality going to show you? It's going to mirror back you being confused, right? It's going to mirror back confusion back into your life. So the thing is, even if you feel confused, you don't want to be somebody who's confused, right? You can feel like you don't know what's going on, anxious, whatever, but you are actively the decider. It is not your feelings or emotions that are ever deciding anything. It's you who decides anything in your life. And so uh, you have to really understand that. So what you're going to do, like this is the pretty much blueprint of how anything you want to materialize anything in your life. This is how you do it. You make the choice. Your ego is going to respond to that choice, and anytime it does, you're still going to choose the new one. So that can look like this. You're affirming for a relationship, right? You want a happy, healthy, safe relationship, and your ego is going to send you all these negative thoughts, feelings, beliefs, or visuals. It's going to make you remember bad things. You're going to experience whatever the ego is showing you in your mind. Don't fight that, right? Because fighting that is only ever going to make the ego more powerful. It's only ever going to keep that running more. Let the feeling and emotions and thoughts kind of just blow past you. And I know it's a lot harder to do that than it is for me to say that, but you have to allow the experience of that to internally like play out. You need to let that go internally, right? So let that experience happen. But as that is happening, you're going to tell yourself, actually the truth is I'm already in that safe, happy, healthy relationship right now. So like regardless of what you're showing me right now, I know I'm in that happy, healthy, safe relationship anyway, right? So the more you do this, the ego eventually loses more and more control and more power over you. So then when you do this, you naturally start to detach from the outside. You stop caring so much about what the fuck is going on outside because you're becoming more content with your life already, right? You have to be content internally, and then you also have to be content with what's outside of you as well. You don't have to necessarily like it, but you can just see it as perfect. You can see something as perfect without necessarily liking it. And when you do that, you become neutral to the things that are happening around you, but as well as what's happening internally. Because again, you're the observer. And when you observe something, you're always going to be neutral towards it. And then you play something on it, right? So as much as you're letting the old story play out in the 3D, you're doing the same thing in the your internal world as well. So it's really balancing those two forces, which people tend to get fucked up. But it's a lot easier than you think. It's just that we, as society as we are right now, we have such easy access to dopamine and information, and sometimes not all that information is good information. The manifestation community in itself can be very predatory. It is very predatory actually, and it's gotten to a point where it's really hard to know who to trust, right? But ultimately, you just have to trust yourself. You don't have to fucking believe a word of what I'm saying or anyone else on the internet is saying. You do what feels right for you. And that is ultimately what manifesting is in the purest form, is understanding what works for you and what works for you the best. But that's his own discussion. But essentially, you're going to keep doing this, and then naturally the outside is going to reflect that change back to you. It's not a matter of work. I don't want you guys to see this as internal work that you need to do, but rather just an experience, right? The second you decided something, it was done. The creation of that was already finished when you decided that, because it already existed beforehand, right? But now you're just actively choosing to experience that, right? We're not changing anything. We're not making anything happen. You just decided something, and now that's playing out in your life. Internally first, then externally, right? We're not in charge of timelines. You can literally, if I wanted to and I said I'm going to date this girl today, like in my head I said we're dating right now, I could see the materialization for that like in 2 minutes, in like 30 seconds, whatever, right? But not everybody's story plays out the same. Why is that? I don't know. Nobody knows. That's beyond our human intelligence. It's not something our ego can perceive, which is why we don't know. So don't try to figure it out. Honestly, it's honestly easier for you to just be oblivious to what has to happen. It's easier for you to not have to know and just let shit happen. That way you're not resisting the change. Because when you try to figure things out, you want it to play out a certain way. And if it doesn't play out exactly how you're expecting, then you think you're fucking shit up. So stop caring so much about how something's going to play out and then just let it play out. Even if you're not seeing anything, give it the meaning that is playing out anyway, because what do you have to lose from doing that? If you give everything a neutral or favorable meaning, then you're not fucking anything up. Again, you're the ultimate decider of every experience in your life and what you're experiencing constantly all the time. So if you give something a good meaning, then you're naturally going to experience better and better and better things because everything you're experiencing already is good and perfect already. So naturally, life will give you reality, and universe is going to give you more of that thing, right? So apply that into your own life. Give things good meanings, and then also just allow the experience to happen anyway, right? And so as we're doing this, obviously there are going to be times where we have to take action, right? And so this is something that is really important too, right? So it's something I used to struggle with, and I think a lot of people struggle with, is knowing when to or how to take action, right? The idea is that we never want to force anything, right? You don't want to force the relationship. You don't want to force the job. You don't want to actively be somebody who's seeking that thing out, right? Because you already have that thing. Why would you be seeking it out? You already have that thing. Why would you be efforting so hard to bring it into your life if you already have it, right? Why would you need to go look for that thing if you already fucking have it? It just doesn't make sense for you to do that, right? So, something that really helps, right, is a knowing that if you ever have to take action, it's going to happen naturally. You're just going to take it naturally, right? So if something arises within the 3D, you're naturally going to take the right action anyway. If you keep giving yourself the meaning that no matter what action I take, it's the right one, then it doesn't matter what you do in the 3D world, every action you take is the right one. So for example, if your SP texts you out of nowhere and you have a nice conversation, you responding to the message was the right action because that was an inspired action based off who you were being, right? Your person texting you happened because you were already dating them in the first place, and then your reaction, your action to that was naturally from the identity from somebody who's already dating them, because obviously if you're going to date somebody, you're going to talk to them all the time anyway, right? Same thing. Now, if you get a nudge to do something, so if you feel the urge to take an action, this is something where you really need to be a little cautious, right? And I always like to ask myself, am I taking this action to make something happen? Or am I just doing this through the identity that would already have this in the first place, right? For example, it's New Year's. New Year's is coming up. Maybe you want to wish your person Happy New Year's or something, right? But if there's some sort of feeling that's conflicting within you, first of all, understand, look, ask yourself, why is that there? Once you understand why it's there, you can make this decision, right? Am I going to text them because I want something to happen, or am I going to text them because I genuinely just want to talk to them, right? Because we're dating, or we're in a relationship, whatever, right? So you have to understand that why you have to understand why you're taking that action in the first place, right? What identity are you taking that from? And then ultimately, you have to understand that the outcome isn't something you can control. So whether if they respond to you or not, or if they, whatever it may be, or depending on whatever circumstance or whatever you're trying to manifest, and you take an action, the outcome isn't in your control, right? So you will only ever see, again, the reflection of who you're being, but also, whatever materialization is happening in that moment, you're going to see that too. So if your person doesn't text you back, don't see that as a bad thing. Just see that as like, okay, they're probably busy or whatever, like you have to give it a good meaning. And if they do text you back, then that's a good thing, right? Obviously they texted you back because you're together. If they didn't, that's okay. She's going to get back to me eventually, or he's going to get back to me eventually, because you are irresistible. You are fucking perfect and amazing, whatever, right? You have to give it a good meaning. Give everything a good meaning, no matter if what is being presented to you outside is good or bad, right? And even if you feel like you're expecting something bad, just understand that it's your ego that's expecting that, not you. Call it out. Just be like, hey, I'm not even the one that's expecting something bad. In fact, everything works out for me, right? The thing is, you want to catch this little fucker. You want to catch the ego. You want to understand, by catching it, you understand that it is your ego and it's not you. It creates separation from your ego and awareness, so that you can live your life with a lot more relaxation, knowing that every little trigger is not even you in the first place. So there's nothing you really have to do about it because it's not you. So that is another thing that I will get into, is that you are not your ego. You are simply always just observing your ego, right? Any feeling or emotion, all these things, these are all things that come from the ego. You're just going to observe it, even if it's good or bad, right? So you can feel something good, know it's ego. Like you can feel something bad, just know it's ego. Like these are all just neutral things that we're giving meanings. The ego in itself is a neutral act, or not act, it's a neutral being, I guess you could call it that, but it is neutral. It's nothing, it's not out to get you or anything like that. So don't see your ego that way. It doesn't do anything for you to do that. But yeah, kind of going back to the topic in hand, just to summarize action really quickly. If you are going to take action, make sure that it is from the identity that already has that thing. And no matter what you see outside of you, whatever reaction you get to that, give it a good meaning and then move on, right? And each time, doesn't matter how intrusive or how often the ego tries to attack you, each time you're going to continue to choose the new identity. And that's it. It is so simple. You aren't going to fight it. You're not going to try to over explain yourself and try to get the ego to be convinced by whatever it is you're trying to say. We're not trying to convince our ego that we are the identity. We already are it. Why in the world would we try to, why would we try to convince something that we are something? I don't have to convince you that I'm a YouTuber. I don't have to convince you that I have red hair or that I'm wearing glasses. It's just the truth. It's just that. So you just kind of are applying things a certain way, and you're going to do the same thing. You know your truth. You don't have to explain it. A lot of the times because we're human, we try to overcomplicate things in our own mind, right? There will be times where your ego's spinning this whole story, and you sometimes have to kind of act like a kid a little bit, right? Like your ego's going to give you all these fucking logical reasons as to why something might not happen or can't not happen, or like why something outside of you looks the way it does, whatever. And you're just going to be like a 5-year-old kid, and you're just going to be like, nope, actually it's this way instead. You don't have to give a whole story as to why something's the way it is. You can do that. I even find myself doing that, but you don't have to do that. Just be like, no, it's actually this way, because again, we don't have to figure anything out. You're only ever choosing, right? So intelligence, higher intelligence, God, universe already knows everything. Why would we have to try to explain it to God or the universe when the universe has it handled? It knows things we don't. So we can just make this statement and know that it's already known. So that's it. So even if your ego is spinning all these, like, she did this in the past, she was like this in the past, blah, 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 but remember this one, blah, blah, blah. Actually, no, none of that's even true. Like, we're together right now. She's loyal, faithful, committed to me right now. So it's like, you just make it simple. Just make it simple for yourself. Don't overcomplicate shit. We as human beings, and oh my God, I see this in my comments. I see this like on other people's comments. People are so quick to make a story as to why nothing can work out for them, right? Like, it is so crazy. Like, you will tell yourself that something's working out, and then you're actively going to stay and write a story as to how you are just reacting to the 3D, right? You're just observing this outside world. You don't have to identify with what's out there, and that's something that we have to understand. And that's when you really understand that, then nothing can really shake you out there or in here, right? It's just that simple. You want to, and this is when Neville Goddard said, be still and know. I think it was something like that. What you're doing is you're staying stillness in the way where, like, regardless of what is happening in your mind or what's happening out there, you're still in your knowing. So regardless if things aren't looking how you want them to outside, you still know that your end is the truth, that it is inevitable. So even if your mind is fighting you on something, even if there's doubts and fears that are appearing in your mind, you still know, you still know that whatever you decided is real. So you're only ever choosing the real truth. That's it, right? You're not really ever doing anything more than that. You're just deciding and sticking to that decision constantly. And it all returns to that. You can find a billion reasons as to why something can't work for you, and you can just, with a snap of a finger, change that by saying, actually, no, it already did work out because we're together now. It already did work out because I have that job right now. It already did work out because I already have the house right now. So it is so much simpler than we make it out to be. You don't have to figure anything out, internally or externally, right? And just trust. A lot of this goes down to trust. Actually, it completely goes down to trust, right? Trusting yourself. And this is why I say it's so important for us to stop watching so much content and kind of limiting who you watch and how much of it you watch, because ultimately we want to be able to kind of cultivate this inner knowing and inner trust. Like you hear this a lot, but how do you actually trust yourself, right? And you trust yourself by trusting, like you go through these hardships mentally, and you go and you're still trusting through them. And as you do this more and more, this is how you build trust. You build trust in yourself, not because you're experiencing better shit out there. It's because no matter what's happening in your mind, you're unshakable to it. And so obviously once you're unshakable, as you become unshakable, there's no choice but for shit to materialize the way you want it to, because you can't be moved by the old story, or you aren't being moved by it no matter what you're feeling. Again, you can feel your entire spectrum of emotions, right? Understand this. You can feel everything. You can have every emotion felt. You can cry, yearn, you can feel anger, fear, whatever the hell you want, happiness, excitement, lust, love. You can feel all of it and still know your truth. Understand that. You can feel everything and still know your truth. Your mind can show you every bad memory ever, and you can still choose to know that you have that thing. It's that simple. You are the decider. You're the only one choosing. So keep that in mind. Don't fight yourself in the same way that you did before, right? It's only you versus you. It's not you and versus what's outside of you. It's you versus whatever's happening internally. And the better you are at keeping your old self in check, the more you're choosing yourself. And as you do this, you become more detached from the desire itself, because you're going to be obviously putting in all this work. I'm teaching guys a lot of how to deal with your ego, but we also want to cultivate this identity as well and make this be our dominant state. And you're never out of a state unless you say you are. You're never not being the identity unless you say you are. So keep that in mind also. But the way that we become this state almost is by experiencing it internally. So that could be just affirming, that could be visualizing, that can be fucking anything you want. Any of the methods that people are telling you online, you can do those things, but understand that is not the technique that is bringing anything in. It is your identity that is. So you can do whatever you want. You can do sats and visualizations and meditations and all that, but understand those things are not what's bringing anything in. It's your identity. What you're doing to kind of remember these things, again, when you're experiencing a visualization or if you're affirming something, you're just remembering the identity that has that, because it's already you. So you're reminding yourself that you are already that thing. So keep that in your mind, that if you're affirming something, if you're visualizing something, you're remembering a memory of something that already existed, or you're reminding yourself about something that is already true right now. So understand that. That is exactly what you are doing when you are affirming or visualizing or anything, right? Any other sort of technique. You're just reminding yourself. That's it. And so this is how we cultivate that identity. And you can do this as little or as often as you'd like. People love to be like, oh, you don't have to fucking go around the whole day saying your affirmations. If you want to, you can. But if you're going to robotically affirm, don't let it be something that people really get fucked with the robotic affirming thing, because they are doing it with the intention that you're making something happen. And so, you will start to see the materialization of whatever it is that you want, because you've been placing it in your awareness like fucking nonstop. But when you stop doing that, then it's going to go away just as quick, because you're not staying on top of that, right? Which is why you can robotically affirm, but understand that you're doing that to remember who you are, not to make anything happen. That way, even if you're not robotically affirming, it remains consistent in your life. So, again, just summarizing techniques, you're remembering something that's already true because you decided it to be true. That is the most important thing that you kind of have to understand and remember about manifesting through through techniques, right? So that is that. And I knew I threw for a lot of you, whoever's listening to this, these are some of these things that you might already know. These might be newer things that you're hearing. There might be some things that make sense to you, some things that might not make sense to you, and that's okay. You can always ask questions in the comments. You can always book calls with me, email me, whatever it is. I can make sure things are very clearly explained. I know I'm throwing a lot at you guys right now, but understand that it's coming from a place of I used to be exactly in these positions. Like I was struggling. I was super attached to what I wanted. I was in this place where like everything felt like a threat. And so which is why I can tell you guys from experience that nothing is ever threatening you unless you say that something is threatening you. And so this will be like that'll be another topic I will talk about eventually, but you know, as I wrap up this video, I think I did like the first half kind of explaining things, and I want to give my own experiences as the new year is coming to an end, and how I even got to this coaching idea, and even manifesting as a whole. And I want to give you guys a little bit of my story, right? So I can give you the same level of relatability that I think you guys deserve to hear from me, right? And so I'm just gonna go ahead and say my story, how I got into all this, and why I think it'll be good for you guys to hear what I'm saying, right? So it all kind of started, I want to say, a year ago, a little bit longer than a year ago, so almost a year and 5, 6 months, 7 months. It was last year, last August, so like August 2024. So it kind of all started with um, with an SP, but not really. It was, yes, but there was other things I was also manifesting before this anyway, but it doesn't really matter. But yeah, so it started off with an SP, right? I learned about what manifestation was. I got a TikTok about it or something, and I was like, you know what, let's try it. Or actually, no, it was some like a Lionsgate fucking portal bullshit, and I was like, oh my god, this is like really cool. What do I want? Oh, I want a girlfriend. Oh wait, there's this girl I liked for like 4 years, and let me like get with her, right? So I decided that day of the Lionsgate portal or whatever the fuck it was that I wanted to manifest this, and that kind of changed the trajectory of my entire life for the next year till today. So, you know, I I wrote down what I wanted, and I wrote down a list of all the things I wanted to experience within that year. And I can look back at it and I can say for certain that I did experience most of, a good portion of what was on that list. And, I'll get to that later. So like I told myself that I wanted a new car, and I told myself that I wanted to be living I wanted to move out, so I wanted to move to New York. I'm living in New Jersey right now, but I wanted to move to New York. Um, and I wanted to be in this relationship with this girl, and I also wanted to find something that I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So like I get myself a job that I love to do, right? So everything kind of led to this coaching, right? And helping people, because this is something that I love to do, and teaching people, right? I'd always loved teaching. I wanted to become a teacher. I'm going to college for something separate, but I've always loved teaching. And even outside of coaching, I am a martial arts instructor, so I teach like all age groups, and I'm actively a fighter as well. So I've always loved teaching, and I knew that was something that I wanted to do just throughout my life anyway, and like it just kind of fell into place with coaching, but I'm getting ahead of myself, right? So this girl that I wanted to be in a relationship with, I had a pretty uh, heavy story, right? Some stuff was done in the past that was, very traumatic to me at the time. And so there was a lot of these things that I didn't know when I was starting off. Like when parts of the old story would come up, like I would always be afraid of what she was doing when I wasn't with her, or you know, um, I was always on fight or flight to see if I was gonna be hurt again. But obviously at the time I didn't know what I know now. I didn't know what to do with my feelings. I didn't know what to do with these emotions, and they were really strong. Like they were heavy panic attacks, and like I was constantly like watching her like location, and I was like, if she didn't text me for a certain amount of time, then I would start freaking out. I thought she'd be pulling away from me, and I look back at all these things over the year, and it's not like nothing was ever really that bad in terms of like she was always easily accessible to me in the 3D. Like we lived pretty close to each other, and we hung out like all the time, you know, like pretty much multiple times a week, every single month, like we were out all the time. So, I was in constant contact with her, and I think being in constant contact with her, all the time, looking back at it, did actually give me a good view on what I needed to kind of address towards myself internally, that I can look at now, but at the time I didn't know. But as I was learning, and so I had a lot of this heavy story, this really, like, I was being the identity of somebody that was hurt, but also somebody who wanted to be with this girl because we do care for each other a lot, and we'd love each other. So it's like, yeah, you know, it was kind of coming to terms with whatever happened in the past happened. I'm not going to go back and change that, but also, you know, choosing this new story. And so as I would do this, I would learn more and more things. And there was a point in time where I was watching videos every day for multiple months, and doing that really kind of fucks with you. And what it does is it puts you in this spiritual psychosis, and it kind of like makes you really, really looking like, it forces you to kind of look in the external world for proof of everything. And it was just a really bad place. Like, I was just really in a horrible place for a very long time. So I was dealing with a lot of hot and cold throughout the year. And I, as this was all happening, I was still also learning a lot about manifestation. And then I eventually, came across a few content creators that I really liked, and I stopped watching everyone else. And I just stuck to those teachings, and those kind of the teachings I'm teaching you guys now, but with my own spin on it, what worked for me. And so, you know, um, you become more comfortable in yourself when you stop watching so much shit. But I promise you, I was watching so much content. My entire fucking For You page was filled with manifestation content. I would write down all these crazy affirmations, and I would like do all these other crazy things that people are telling me to do to manifest things instantly. And I was a wreck, okay? And obviously, that would also be reflected back outside. So, like, if I was feeling like a wreck inside and I was identifying with, oh my god, shit's a mess, then shit's gonna look like a mess out there. Excuse me. And, you know, you have to really be aware of what's going on internally, which I was very always aware of what was going on internally, but I didn't know exactly how to deal with that because I was listening to so much shit. I was so conflicted with what I could and I couldn't do. And so, I did experience a lot of hot and cold. And so I believe it was around March. There was a lot of like, not even March, but even before this, throughout the year, there was a lot of like random third party situations that arose, and I was able to deal with those things, but I never addressed what was really underlying, or I wasn't really being consistent with what I had to do. So, this repeat situation kind of kept on happening. And underlying all of this, there was always this constant fear of what happened to me in the past. I was so afraid that I didn't want to experience that again, but I was afraid that she would do that again, right? Although there was nothing even pointing to that in the first place, I was so paranoid of that happening. So I was constantly living in this state of fear. And the thing about manifestation is when the universe wants you to address something, it's going to make sure you do, okay? And it will find a way for you to address it because you need to let it go, right? Like you need to and this is why people get stuck their whole lives and they don't ever really get anything they want, is because they don't understand that when something that looks like the opposite's happening to you, it's happening to push out whatever it is that hurt you so that something new can come in for you, right? Something better with whatever it is that you want. So this was around March. Actually, no, probably May, closer to May. I started my first internship, and so I was working 5 days a week at this point. Actually, no, 6 days a week because I worked weekends. I still work weekends, but because of college and all that. But I was working weekends or just Saturday, but I was also working throughout the week, so I wasn't going to be able to hang out with her because our schedules just didn't align. So I was getting really paranoid that we wouldn't be able to see each other for a long time and that, I might lose this connection. And that fear manifested in a way where she actually moved away to New York, right? And at the time, it kind of like tore my world apart. Like I was really, really, actually, even before that, there was, excuse me, something that happened because I was so paranoid and scared of the old story of her. It was so strong within me. I would check her social medias all the time to see if she was going to do anything to hurt me. And I remember this one day, I was actually at a family member's house. There was like a wedding thing going on, and I go on Twitter. It was like I woke up. It was like 2 or 3 in the morning, and I was already paranoid earlier that day because she like made a tweet about something as if like she was gonna go out on a date with somebody, which she hadn't ever done, like in the year or like the year leading up to that point. And so it made me super paranoid. Like I got so scared of what was gonna happen, and like I couldn't even go back to sleep. Somehow I went back to sleep, and that paranoia and that fear just festered in me so long because I never really dealt with it. I never really kind of let go of that story the way I should have, and I was supposed to. So again, this goes down to what you resist will persist, and it will find a way to make it seen, right? And so I blew up what was happening so much worse than it really was in my head. And yeah, so it just was something that I had to acknowledge. I acknowledged it and I let go. And I saw like a cute little uh, materialization of just safety, right? Like I got home from that family member's house and I wasn't like answering any of my text or calls. Like she was texting me because I didn't show up to work that day. I already knew I wasn't going to, but my manager forgot, whatever. It's another thing. And so everybody was kind of worried for me. And I think later that night I was going to bed and then she like drove over to my house and like got me a bunch of stuff, like some of my favorite foods and just to, see that I'm okay. And I was still so worried about the third party, but I was also grateful for, you know, what she was doing. And so I acknowledged the fears that I had. And once I acknowledged the fears that I had, I said, even though all of that stuff happened, I want to let it go. And so, you know, that really helped kind of eliminate that fear from me. And so now, even if that fear or worry shows up in my mind, I don't care for it. Like, I really don't. No matter what emotions or feelings come up, I know it isn't real. But again, the process to getting here wasn't easy, right? Like, again, that internship, I was still going throughout the internship. And throughout that, we do work together. We did work together, sorry. And I didn't see her at work either, so I wasn't in communication with her, but also I, you know, wasn't really texting her all that much like we used to, and things felt distant. So I was really afraid that she would kind of forget me and our path would kind of end here. And so, I was going through the internship and I had so much time throughout the internship to myself that I would be literally thinking for hours, like 6 hours of my shift. I was just like in my mind every day. It was horrible. I literally hated working at that point so badly because I was just fighting my thoughts all day. Mind you, I wasn't seeing anything in the 3D at this time either, right? She like moved to New York without really telling anybody, or not really. She didn't tell anybody, but like we didn't really know any of the details of when she was gonna go. Like it was such a quick, abrupt thing. So I don't live that far from New York, but again, it felt like I was like losing her in my life. But looking back at it, it was kind of funny because one of the things that I wanted to manifest was living in New York with her, and it was something that we talked about all the time. It's like when I graduate, like me and her and one of our other friends, like the three of us were gonna live together or whatever, and you know. I could have seen it that as that being the materialization, but I was so in my own head and so in fear that I couldn't see that perspective at the time. So for that entire like May till pretty much August, I was in the worst mental state possible. I was giving the worst meanings to things and it was just really bad. I was beating myself up in the spiritual psychosis. I was not trusting that anything could work out. And I wasn't hearing from her for those months at all, like very little communication. And it felt like I'd lost her for that period of my life. And then, I just felt like I wanted to give up. And I learned all these things throughout the months and I was accumulating all this knowledge, but I just still didn't really know what to do because I wasn't trusting in myself. And this is why I'm saying trusting in yourself is important, is the most important thing, because if you don't trust yourself, nothing you know matters. So you have to trust yourself, right? No matter what, your trust in your knowing is what brings anything in your life. It's not anything else. So it's just you guys have to really learn to trust. That's why I preach it being such an important thing. But going back to the story, I was really afraid that in New York I wouldn't be able to see her again, that I would be lost in her life, that she'll see other people, and that I would lose my place in her life. And externally, that's kind of what things looked like, right? Things looked that way, And you know, I had a very weak moment. I had many weak moments throughout that time, and then there was just one day where it was. I think it was the last day of my. It was like the last day of my. Sorry, I'm blanking. The last day of the internship, and so I wrote my farewell letter. I got home, and I got this nudge to watch content again. At this point, I wasn't watching anything. I just was so fed up with manifesting, but I was still doing it, right? But I was so fed up with it because you can't be unaware of how life works once you're aware of it. And so I watched this YouTube video of this content creator I really like. His name is Eric. I'm blanking on his. I Am Awareness, I think, is his YouTube handle. He's like the best mentor possible. Everything I know, I learned from him. So, I watched his video and I decided, I again made the decision that she's already mine, and this time, I don't care about any of the other shit. Right? I don't care for the feelings. I don't care for the emotions. I don't care for any of it. And I was starting to work on my self concept again. This was something I neglected. I was neglecting my self concept, neglecting my self worth, and it was something that I started to work on again. And I instantly started to see better shit happening for me, right? The way women were perceiving me in the outside world was much different. I was gaining more attention. A lot of the affirmations I was saying about myself were being mirrored back to me. You know, I had so many small moments where people found me incredibly attractive, and I was starting to see and gaining this confidence within myself that I didn't have for like the better part of a year. And then one day, I randomly got into a fight with our best friend. So like, again, the three of us worked together, and you know, we got into a fight at work. Nothing crazy, but um, that led to like a FaceTime call between the three of us, her, our friend, and me. And that was the first time we spoke to each other in months, and it was kind of reassuring because it felt like, you know, things were back to normal in a weird way. So this all kind of goes back to saying that you just have to trust yourself, right? And even in that FaceTime call, like, we made up or whatever, and then we were just talking like we normally would, like friends. So like, there were some reflections of the old story, but also some of the new. And you have to understand, when you see the old story, it's the old story playing out. And I think that you know you have to, again, it's not easy, but you have to understand when something's happening. You can understand when something's happening in 3D, why it's happening. Knowing why it's happening, you know, makes it easier to let go of. So we made a plan, or she even made the plan to, meet up with me the next week. Like, she was going to be coming over to town. And so, she made the plan to meet up, and we were supposed to hang out or whatever. And I placed a lot of importance on the hangout. Like, I was very excited for it, but also very worried and afraid, and felt like it had to be perfect. So these were things that I had to address within myself that I wasn't addressing. And so obviously, the day of the thing comes around, of the hangout comes around, and she cancels. And I got so upset. I got so mad. And, I started crying because I was like, oh my God, like, why did this happen? Blah, blah, blah. I got so upset. Like, I was ready for this day. And then it just didn't end up happening. So I got really upset. And, at the time I didn't realize it. I realized it, I think, like maybe the next day or something. But um, again, this was just an old fear, old worry that was just kind of materializing out so that something new can come in. And, you know, uh, things after that happened, still held like this resentment towards her for a while, because like she never followed up. Like, I had this story where she would never follow up with anything. She couldn't commit to anything, and like she wasn't a very like committed person, whatever, right? And so obviously these things were being reflected back to me. My mind was fighting me on that like crazy, and I really just had to take the time to let this shit just naturally detach. And things did, right? Things naturally did detach at one point. And then I felt this urge on Halloween, like this Halloween, to text her, hey, I'm going to be in the city. Like, I miss you. And, just wanted to let you know. And then we ended up hanging out. And some of my fears that I was holding were reflected back to me. But this time, I was the identity that knew that we were going to be together anyway. So when she was talking about some third party situation, I didn't even care, right? And in fact, I was feeling so good. And objectively, if you looked at the events that happened that day, they weren't the best. In fact, it wasn't really the best at all. But I didn't even give a fuck. Honestly, I was like really glad because I'm like actually understanding how life works now. So I remember on the way back home, I texted her and I kind of told her everything I was feeling, like how I was feeling throughout the entire internship. And this was, again, inspired action through the identity that already has what I want. I told her how I was feeling, how much she means to me, and all these things. And I was afraid that she wouldn't get back, or not, I wasn't afraid, but in the past, when I was very vulnerable with her, um, I never got a response back from it, which was traumatic in its own way. And so a similar thing happened this time, but I didn't care. I didn't care at all because this time I did it for myself. I didn't do it to make anything happen. This was the action I took from my own identity. So knowing that, I didn't care about what would happen in the 3D because I did this to fulfill my own self. And you know, a couple, I think a week went by, and then she texted me again. And since that day, things have been really good for the both of us, right? And you know, even when there are moments where there might be some time might go by where I don't hear from her, and obviously there are some doubts and fears that might come up, but I recognize that they've already moved out, they've left me, and they aren't real, and I don't have to worry about them. So this is all to say how much growth you can have if you're just doing the right things. Reality moves so quickly, you just have to have the eyes to see that, right? When you stop focusing on time, you don't care how much time goes by, right? It doesn't matter to me if I haven't seen her in 2 3 months or if I haven't spoke to her in a while. It doesn't matter to me because everything's working out anyway, right? And my self-concept has gotten to a point where I could pull anybody I wanted, right? I don't care. Like, yes, I love her. Yes, I want to be with her, but also I deserve better. I deserve the best respect and I deserve to be treated well. And so knowing that, I'm okay with or without her, right? Because I know my worth. So that's when things start to really work out for you. When you know your work, when you know your worth, and you really start to allow yourself to be the identity that is worthy, then you absolutely will start to see the materialization of that because you know who you are. You know your worth and you know you're worthy of the things that you desire. And so this is ultimately to say I'm in a better place now than I was a year ago. I've grown tremendously over the past year that most people would not even I would not have even begin to imagine how much growth I've had in a year. I wouldn't have even imagined I have the things I have right now in a year. So like I mentioned earlier, I have a new car. I got a new car. But the way that came in, I could have never imagined. I got into a car crash and then I got a new car that I wanted a couple of years ago. So I got that car. The thing about uh, moving to New York, right? Uh, my person's living in New York now, and things are naturally going to work out in a way where we're going to end up together, or new job opportunities. I already have that now, right? So a lot of these things I was already materialize, or things I wanted started to materialize for me in such an effortless way when I stopped caring how they were going to come in or what it was going to look like or any of that, right? Once you let go of the gas pedal and you just let the car go on its own, things will naturally come to you, right? You might not know what that looks like, but ultimately at the end of this, the idea is that you are trusting in the process and that no matter what, it is inevitable that, things will work out. So, if anything, take my story and let that be something that humanizes me to you. So you stop looking at coaches as these deities or these people that are above you that know everything. Like, we are all human. We are all still going through certain things in our own lives that you might not be hearing, right? So this image that we portray, understand, it's for your own benefit, but also it's something that everyone faces, right? And then, once you get to a point where you're so comfortable in your own life, things just become calm and relaxed. And for the better part of like the past 2 3 months, my life has been very calm, very relaxing, and it's been very good. I'm not obsessed with her. I'm not obsessed with anything, and I just trust things will work out, right? And that is where you want to be. That is the perfect spot to be, right? Not giving a fuck, but being content with your inner mind knowing it's done, but also not caring what's out there, right? And that's it, right? It's really that simple. So if you have learned anything throughout this video, this podcast episode, it is that first I taught you how to manifest, what that is going to look like, how ego and awareness play into all of that. But also, I gave you my own experience, albeit a very short, condensed version of that. But you can relate to that. You can understand. I'm showing you that, yeah, I went through moments where shit felt rough and I didn't exactly make the right choice at the time. But you allow yourself to trust yourself to get to the point where no matter what, everything you do is the right move, right? And when you do that, you become unstoppable and life relaxes. Life calms down. It doesn't feel like a threat. Everything doesn't feel like a threat. My nervous system has been the most it's relaxed in in years, okay? I'm not in fight or flight anymore. I'm not looking for a threat constantly. I'm not looking for something to hurt me or break my heart anymore, right? Anytime that comes up, I just know it isn't real. So I don't have to do anything to it. Get to that point of comfortability, right? That's where you want to be. So this has been running on for like an hour, but hopefully you guys enjoyed the first episode and hopefully this, you gained something from it. And if you did, give me a like in the comments. Let me know what else you want to hear, what topics you want to hear me talk about, and if there's anything else that you want to see from the channel, and I can definitely make that happen. I'm all ears. I want to pump out as much content as I can for you guys, get the YouTube going. And again, very, very grateful for you guys listening to the first episode of Whispers Through the Veil. So again, thank you guys so much. That I have coaching options available if you want them, and I will catch you guys on the next episode, next video, whatever it is on TikTok, whatever you guys watch me on. I will catch you guys there. And again, have a great day. Enjoy your New Year's, and I will catch you guys later.